Welcome, fellow seekers of the unknown, to Paranormal M. Subscribe and enable notifications to join us in exploring the enigmas that lie beyond. Get ready for a captivating adventure into the mysterious. Sleepless Journey. Real story. In the quiet town where I lived, something peculiar started to unfold. A relentless bout of sleeplessness that defied all reason. It began innocently enough, with a few nights of restlessness and an ever-present feeling of unease. But as time wore on, an eerie presence seemed to seep into my waking hours, infusing the air with an unsettling energy. The once familiar glow of the moon lost its soothing touch, casting an ominous light upon the night. Sleepless nights turned into harrowing ordeals, plagued by an unyielding inability to find solace in slumber. The stillness of the night air felt heavy, as if unseen eyes were silently watching my every move. With each passing night, reality began to blur with the surreal. Whispers echoed through the recesses of my mind, ethereal voices that beckoned from realms beyond human understanding. Shadows danced with an uncanny life, their eerie movements conjuring visions of nameless terrors that sent shivers down my spine. Driven by desperation, I sought guidance from those versed in the mystical and the unknown. Through whispered rumors and clandestine networks, I came upon an enigmatic figure, a witch who claimed knowledge of the hidden forces that ensnared me. Within the witch's house, a dimly lit room adorned with peculiar objects, an air of ancient wisdom hung in the air. The energy crackled, pregnant with a mysterious power, as the witch draped in a cloak led me through ancient rituals and incantations. In the chamber adorned with symbols that seemed to writhe upon the walls, the witch invoked forces beyond mortal comprehension. Candlelight flickered, casting dancing shadows that seemed to possess an eerie sentience. Whispers filled the air, carrying the weight of forgotten knowledge and ancient secrets. As the witch chanted in an unfamiliar tongue, a rift in reality materialized before me. A door to the unseen, a portal bridging our world with the realms shrouded in mystery. A presence, simultaneously awe-inspiring and disconcerting, emanated from the depths of that void, its ethereal touch brushing against the edges of my consciousness. Summoning my resolve, I resisted the entity's mesmerizing allure, bolstered by determination to reclaim my restless nights. The witch's incantations grew in strength, merging with my own inner fortitude to form a barrier against the insidious presence that sought to consume me. In a burst of ethereal light, the entity recoiled, its power waning against the strength of my will. The void closed, severing the connection to those unseen realms, and I found myself standing on the precipice of a transformed existence. Through sleepless nights persisted, a newfound awareness of the otherworldly allowed me to navigate the darkness with an unwavering spirit. Now I walk the delicate line between the ordinary and the supernatural, forever touched by the lingering presence of that otherworldly encounter. Sleepless nights continue, haunted by the echoes of that ethereal force. But I'm no longer its captive. I am the guardian of my own fragile reality, forever mindful of the uncharted depths that lie beyond the realm of mortal slumber. The Chupacabra. What do you think of this? The story behind the Chupacabra phenomenon is a fascinating tale that emerged in the late 20th century. Specifically in Puerto Rico. The term chupacabra translates to goat sucker in Spanish, and it refers to a creature that allegedly attacks and kills livestock, particularly goats, by draining their blood. The chupacabra legend began in the early 1990s when reports of mysterious animal attacks started circulating in Puerto Rico. Farmers and residents discovered their livestock dead with puncture marks on their bodies and completely drained of blood. The media picked up on these accounts, and soon the story spread throughout the island and beyond. Descriptions of the chupacabra varied, but a common depiction emerged as a creature roughly the size of a small bear or large dog, with reptilian-like skin, spines or quills on its back, red glowing eyes, fangs, and a long tongue. Some witnesses claimed it could hop or fly short distances as well. As the reports gained attention, the chupacabra phenomenon expanded beyond Puerto Rico. Similar sightings and livestock killings were reported in other Latin American countries such as Mexico, Chile, and Argentina, as well as in parts of the United States, primarily in the southwestern states like Texas and New Mexico. The chupacabra became a source of intrigue and fear, with some people even speculating that it was an extraterrestrial or a government experiment gone wrong. Various theories and urban legends were born, fueling the mystery surrounding this creature. In reality, the chupacabra sightings can be attributed to a combination of factors. The original reports in Puerto Rico were likely influenced by the widespread belief in supernatural creatures and legends in the region. As the story spread, it is possible that some cases of animal attacks, possibly by feral dogs or other predators, were misinterpreted or embellished to fit the chupacabra narrative. The chupacabra gained more attention and notoriety due to media coverage, which led to an increase in reported sightings. In some cases, the creature found and identified as chupacabras turned out to be known animals with mange or other diseases that altered their appearance. While the chupacabra phenomenon has persisted and become a part of popular culture, skepticism remains regarding its existence as a distinct creature. Many experts and scientists attribute the reported sightings to a combination of misidentification, folklore, and urban legends. The story behind the chupacabra phenomena is a captivating mix of folklore, media attention, and sensationalism. It originated in Puerto Rico in the early 1990s, but it's sort of expanded into other countries, causing intrigue and fear among the public. While the legend of the chupacabra continues to captivate people's imaginations, the evidence supporting its existence as a unique creature remains elusive. Need help and advice on this situation. So recently, my wife and I just felt off about our home. I've recently had a nightmare where something is trying to drag me out of bed, and it feels evil. My wife and I have heard things at night a while ago, and it normally was 3 things around 3 a.m. My mother-in-law came over to hang out with my wife today while I was at work. I'll just start off by saying that she's sensitive to energies related to spirits and believes in the afterlife. While she was here, she was saying that she was picking up on the bad energy and that it was unfriendly. She was in the laundry room and felt it try to pass through her, but told it to leave her alone. Before I got home, she saged our home and told it to leave us alone politely, asking it to show itself to her tonight in her dream, or for her grandmother to tell her. Her late grandmother is someone that comes to her in her dreams or sends messages. Just probably an hour before I'm posting this, the dog we're watching for a bit just ran out of our room barking and growling, almost like he was trying to chase something out of our room. He's not a big dog, he's a dachshund, but he stopped right before the kitchen and growled a little more before coming back to the bedroom. I think a cat haunts my house. I just got off the phone with one of my friends, who is pretty into paranormal stuff, and after talking to him, I decided to post onto here. I don't really know when the first experience happened. I believe I was anywhere from 8 to 11. I was about to go to sleep around 2 a.m. and I felt a cat walk up to my bed and lay down around my pelvis. I took my hand and put it where I thought I felt the cat, and there was an indentation where a cat had been laying, and it was warm, unlike the rest of my bed at the time. About a year later, we found a small kitten inside my brother's engine. The cat couldn't have been older than a few weeks old, and we live in the middle of nowhere with a lot of snakes, so I don't know how the cat would have gotten there without getting killed. The cat died only a few weeks later due to my dog having a disliking for new cats. After probably 2 years of not hearing anything, I heard what sounded like a cat walking down the stairs. I ended up hearing this sound for a good 2 to 3 month period. It was only when somebody was upstairs, like it would see someone was up there, and walked after them about 2 minutes in between my parents going upstairs. Then the cat would go. Most recently, I hear what sounded like somebody walking down the house when I was home alone, and I decided to do a house sweep to make sure no one was inside, and no one was. When I made it back to my room, I decided to lock my door just to be safe. And within 5 minutes, I started hearing scratching at my door, like down at the bottom of my door where a cat would be. Personally, I think my house is haunted by a cat, but I would love to hear y'all's takes. How I know for certain reality isn't what it seems. The most surreal moment of my life. Just over 10 years ago, 2 friends and I were sitting in a KFC. We were all on the booth side of the tables in a row. I was on the far left typing on my BlackBerry. I finished typing and I look to my right and I get a huge jolt of adrenaline. My body goes into fight or flight because I know I've seen this exact image in a dream before. Do you know how when you wake from a dream, you remember it all in intricate detail, but after an hour, all you can remember is vague images that are familiar, but you couldn't really describe what was happening in it to someone anymore? Well, when I looked up, it unlocked the dream memories, because I know I had this dream exact months previously. But it gets stranger. In my dream, I remember when I turned my head to the left, a woman was coming around the corner holding a child's hand. So I turn my head to the left, and a woman is coming around the corner holding a child's hand. So I stood up and said to my friends frantically, I've dreamt this exact moment before. And they said nothing. Neither of them even acknowledged what I was saying, despite how much I was trying to make them listen. I get it, because if someone said this to me, I'd recommend that they go to the hospital. But this really did happen. They finished their food and we got back in the car and got on with our day. The whole time I was having an existential crisis in silence. This wasn't deja vu. I've had deja vu a million times before. But maybe deja vu is a very mild version of this. I know for certain that consciousness extends beyond our physical bodies in the here and now. Unfortunately, I can't prove it. I can only tell you what happened to me. But if anyone else has had experiences like this, I really would like to hear about them. I'm a nurse at a palliative care unit in an old hospital. I'm a nurse at a care unit in an old hospital. If you're a nurse at one of these units like me, or know a nurse, please read or listen until the end. I could use your help. Throughout my years working at this hospital, I've seen a lot, especially being in a palliative care unit. You see a lot of things other people wish they wouldn't. For some of us, at some point, we just have to accept things as they are. The unit I work in has 9 beds in 9 different bedrooms, all spread along a long corridor. At the start of the corridor is the lift, and coming out of it, you'd find the cleaning room on your right, where we keep all the cleaning equipment and products, and the nurse's room on your left, along with the entrance through the stairs. Because of the building and the patient's safety, so we can access the other floors easily if in need, the administration forbade us from locking the stairs doors. This isn't ideal because some of our patients, in their delusions, can go across our room's door unnoticed and will be a danger to themselves. So we always keep the door closed by tying a bedsheet around the door handle to keep them together. This is important so you know why what comes next started out so strange. The nurse's room is where we'll spend most of the night shifts doing all kinds of activities, including resting and actually sleeping. Usually late at night, my routine would include checking on all of our patients, checking on all the doors and windows to make sure that they're all locked properly, checking on the doors to get to the stairs, and then spend most of the night checking patient files. This night in particular, I had finished with my rounds, and I was checking on all the cameras. When my nursing auxiliary came into the nurse's room, she asked me if anything else was needed, or if she was okay to sleep for a while. I told her she was fine just to go to sleep. So she took her shoes off, laid down with her back to the room, and me facing the wall, and went to sleep. I was reading a new patient's file who was coming into our unit soon, to know what to expect and how to behave around him, when I started hearing footsteps walking up and down the unit's corridor. At first, I ignored them, thinking I was just tired and that my ears were playing tricks on me. It wouldn't be the first time. As they persisted, though, I started wondering what was going on. I took another look at the cameras, but each and every one of the bedroom and corridors sort of feed seamlessly and completely normal. I believe they meant to write feels and seemed completely normal. Sorry, a lot of these stories are talk to text, so I don't really get very many clues as I'm reading these stories as to how to read them. I just try my best. On with the story. The steps, though, kept coming all the way into the nurse's room, stopping about 2 steps away from showing at my door, then turning around and walking back all the way to the opposite end of the corridor. I waited to see if anything changed, but when it didn't, I stood up to go check. That's when one of our patients, the one in room number 7, started calling us frantically. My auxiliary nurse was still asleep, so I walked carefully out of the room, peeked out of the room and looked around. There was nothing there, and the footsteps had stopped, so I rushed to the patient's room. When I got there, he was shouting frantically, huddling against the bed's headboard with what seemed like renewed energy, shouting at me to tell the man in the top hat sitting in the chair in the room to go away and leave him be. Usually with patients like these in this state of stress, we just go along with their delusions to calm them down. If there are nurses watching, which I hope there are, you'll know what I mean. In this case, with him screaming in the room, I turned toward the chair and started talking to this imaginary man in a top hat, telling him that he needed to go, that the visiting hours were done, and that he needed to leave right now or we'd have to call security. After this, the patient calmed down, thanked me for sending the man away, and lay back down to rest. I went back to the nurse's room and back to studying the new patient. As I walked back in, my heart stopped. All I felt was panic gripping my heart inside of me. As I stood there not knowing what to do and looking at the surveillance cameras, there was a big shadow standing in the middle of the frame of the camera recording, at the end of the corridor, right in front of the bedroom I had just been in. I took one step back and leaned backward to check if I could see anything there. There was nothing. I gave the cameras another quick glance. and the shadow was still there, standing terrifyingly still in front of this patient's bedroom door. This time, though, when I turned to look directly at the corridor again, this thing was there. For a moment, it felt like everything froze in place, and I just stood there, looking at it like a fool. Then, slowly, it turned towards me, a pair of strange dark red eyes showing. It stood like that for a bit, screeched at me, and flew into the patient's bedroom, slamming the door behind it. My auxiliary nurse jumped awake at the slam of the door and started frantically asking me what was going on. I was out of breath by now. I told her what I had just seen, what had just happened. She couldn't believe me. I asked her to come with me to the patient's bedroom, and she agreed, starting to become curious. We walked slowly through the corridor, passing every door carefully. I was afraid that anything would just come flying at us. When we got to the bedroom, this thing flew into that I pushed the door without going in to check for any kind of danger, and immediately felt a breath of freezing air hit me in the face. The air conditioner was on in every room and set to 23 degrees, so this was not normal. Nothing came flying at us like I was afraid would happen. But there, right in the patient's bed, there was this shadow. I could tell it was a man, tall and strong, with a top hat over his head. I asked my auxiliary nurse if she could see him, not expecting a no. However, that's what I got. She couldn't see anything standing there, and definitely not as clear as I could. Slowly, the shadow turned towards me again. This time, it didn't scream. This time, it slowly dissipated. Immediately, I calmed down. Not only could I not see it anymore, I also couldn't feel it. The sense of calm overcame me, and the patient seemed okay, so we left the room. We went back to the nurse's room. My colleague went back to sleep, and I didn't rest until I checked the rest of the unit to make sure everyone was safe. After that, I couldn't help but stare at the cameras every minute for the rest of the night. Eventually, our shift was over, and we'd basically become the shift with the most intense experience I ever had. The next day, when night came, and I did all my rounds, I went inside to room number 7 to check on that patient. When I came closer to him, I realized he had passed away. This was my first experience with the shadow man in the top hat, but it wasn't the last, and it's still ongoing. I'm the only one who can see him around the unit, which freaks everyone out. Every single time I see him, it's under the same circumstances. I walk into a patient's room, and there's his shadow at the foot of their bed. I wait for a little while until he turns to me and dissipates. 1 or 2 days later, the patient passes away. This is a real story, and it's something I have to live with almost every day now. I'm not sure if this thing is killing people or announcing their deaths, but if you're a nurse in a similar unit or know someone who is, please share this with them and comment what you know about it. I need to know what this is, how to deal with it, and if anyone else has experienced the same as me, even if it's a different looking entity. I can keep you updated on here if people are engaging and want to know more. Let me know if you have any updates, and I'll make sure to bring them. If you're dealing with something like this yourself, know that you're not the only one. Maybe this will help you feel less afraid. Stepdad's Ghost Haunting. When I was 16, 39 now, my stepdad died of lung cancer in the house that I lived in. It was a very sad process, as he didn't want to die, never accepted his fate while he was alive. Towards the end, he was so high on meds he didn't have any grasp on reality. The reason I mention that fact is I believe when he died, he didn't realize he was dead. Now the happenings after his passing. My mom took a second job, and I was home alone a lot. During this time, I would hang out in the basement most of my time, and I would hear footsteps walking from their room to the kitchen often, and would think my mom was, just home. I would head upstairs and nobody was there. But often cabinet doors would be open and the lights would be turned on that I knew were off. I had a very vivid dream where he was telling me about how much better he's feeling and how his hair is growing back, even on his feet. As I woke up from this dream, I was basically convulsing and making this very bizarre snorting noise. That's when I saw him walking out of my room. I had friends over for some drinking and card playing. I decided to go to sleep upstairs in my room, and 3 of my friends were sleeping in the basement. I was woken up by them in my room with them asking me, "How did you do that?" Totally confused, I had no idea what they were talking about. They told me the basement lights were flickering and a radio turned on with song lyrics playing with something along the lines of, "This is my house." They were convinced I was playing some elaborate prank. I wasn't. The footsteps and cabinet door instances would continue, and I became accustomed to hearing noises coming from their room where he died. Noises that sounded like someone going through their things or just moving around. The last time I ever experienced anything from him was the strangest experience of all. I was home alone again, and this time in the upstairs living room, which was right by their bedroom. The bedroom door was open and I was on the couch watching TV. I started to think that I heard something, so I muted the volume and listened. What I heard was very distinct and unmistakable breathing coming from the room. It was distressed and progressively getting louder. I yelled out, "Okay, I hear you. I know you're here. Please stop haunting me. If you want to communicate, visit me in my dreams." The breathing immediately stopped, and I just sunk as far into the couch as possible and tried to continue to watch TV. Now, my mom really didn't know how to deal with his death. This was her soulmate, and she was completely destroyed. She started seeing a guy that she worked with soon after, probably needed comfort or something that I couldn't understand then. Whatever the case, he was over at the house spending time about a month after his death. Whenever he was over, I could feel my stepdad. The best way to describe it, I could just feel his energy and he wasn't happy. The night I heard the breathing and told him to communicate with me in my dreams, I had a dream that night about my mom and her new boyfriend. They were hugging each other and then my stepdad came storming out of their room chasing the guy out of the house. What I took away from that was that he didn't want this man near my mom. Come to find out, he was married and ended up being a ridiculous situation. Since that night, I told him to stop. I never experienced anything else in that house. My mother would see him where she worked often out of the corner of her eye, or she would smell him. One day she called me freaking out saying, I saw him. I turned the corner and he was there, standing in the aisle looking right at me. He still looked sick and very sad. She said he was a full-body apparition and was visible for about 5 seconds. Long enough for her to say, I see you. This was the last time her or I had contact. That might have been the final goodbye. He was a great man. Miss him dearly. Ask Reddit. Many houses I've lived in have been haunted. I have reason to believe it's because my sister and I are conduits for the supernatural. My father and his brother were using a Ouija board when we were children. After playing with it for a while, the two of us, still infants, started screaming. Since then, both my sister and I have seen things in our dreams before that happened in perfect detail. She faints and sees them. I just see them in my dreams. I'm also a lucid dreamer, so I can interact with it and I'm aware it's a dream. Last week, my lights started flickering in my new house. Been here a few months. Only had a few odd instances. Passed off as the wind, perhaps. Doors slowly closing without anyone nearby. Doors opening when locked and closed tightly. Having to close more doors than I open at night. But anyway, yesterday I let my dog out, as I do every morning. After he was out on his chain, I went back in. When I went to grab the door to close it, it slammed itself shut forcefully. That day, the flickering lights had been intense. I've not had anything else since yesterday except my light flickered a little bit, and the temperature dropped a few degrees. My cat is always trying to attack something that isn't there, but I think she's just a little bit schizo. Ask Reddit. I was 5 years old. My brother was 3. Family decided to take a day trip to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Dad is a Civil War enthusiast, and he was excited to see the spot that was called Devil's Den, where there had been apparently a high amount of soldiers killed in that battle, one of the bloodiest in the war. I remember it was August. It was hot and pretty humid that day. I remember walking with my parents up this hill when my parents were approached by this one guy dressed in full-fledged Union uniform, I guess you could call it. I think I remember wondering why he was dressed that way when it was so hot. I genuinely thought he was a tour guide because they make the tour guides dress that way, or did when I went then. I don't remember the conversation between him and my parents. I think I just shrugged it off as adult talk. We got up to the top of this hill, a rocky cliff, which is important to note later in the story, where he was pointing out stuff to my parents, but mostly my dad. There was only one way off and onto this hill, and that was the path that we just took. I remember starting to get bored when he pointed something out for my brother and for me to look at. I remember walking up to the edge and looking down, seeing nothing. When I turned around to tell him so, he wasn't there, at all, vanished. My parents, brother, and I walked all the way down the hill looking for him, but didn't see him. Some things I found out later from my dad when I was older. 1. He greeted my dad by his first name, which spooked him because he'd never seen the guy before in his life. 2. He told my dad he was from a town not far from Gettysburg, and pointed out various towns to him on that hill. Later found out all those towns were destroyed in the Civil War. 3. The park didn't have any tour guides wear uniforms because it was too hot that day. Dad said he even noticed the guy wasn't sweating. I'm a skeptic, but I can honestly say I can't explain this. This happened on vacation with my parents. Every summer we have a tradition of going up to Wisconsin and having a really chill short vacation. And this year we rented a VRBO. I don't know what that is. It was honestly a really nice place. I was also told that it was pretty old, but I'm not sure exactly how old. It happened the night before we left. I was laying in my bed, about to fall asleep, when I heard the doorknob turn and my door crack open. Thinking it was one of my parents, I said, "What the fuck?" But I didn't hear anyone respond. I thought maybe one of them was just checking on my door or something, so I didn't panic, even though I was weirded out. I mentioned that morning that somebody tried to open my door during the night, and my parents mentioned that they both heard the doorknob turn and the door open, and thought I was going to the bathroom or something. Now, I've had doors open on their own before. I remember when I was a kid, there was this one door in my grandparents' house that never latched properly and would open at unexpected times, and I was freaked out the very first few times that it happened. If this is what happened with the door in question, I wouldn't be making this post. In fact, that doorknob turned as if someone was struggling to get my door open. That's what freaked me out. I think my dad is possessed. For a bit of context, around 5 years ago, there was a night where my dad left for work in the morning and never returned home. We became increasingly worried when he wasn't answering his phone and called the police. Eventually, he was found, and it later came out that he was in a building that he works in that's known to be haunted for hours. Following this, I feel stupid for not picking up on the signs, but he was attending church and constantly reading prayers. I just thought that he had gotten more invested into religion. Particularly in recent months, I've noticed my dad to be acting increasingly more strange. He'll have delayed response times and move slowly, and sometimes just be confused. Around half an hour ago, I overheard him on the phone, talking to his mom, my grandmother, and he explained how no one understands that for the last 5 years he's been dealing with spirits, evil spirits like the devil, who insult him and call him names, and tell him to do things like kill himself. He stated that if something such as stupid as suicide was to happen, then it wasn't of his own doings, as he'd never do anything like that. He explained how the demons controlled him and caused him to do things like kicking his legs uncontrollably, which he isn't doing. In his room, on a cabinet next to his bed, he has a picture of Jesus. He says when he wakes up in the morning and looks at the picture, his stomach flattens and makes a growling noise. When he walks away, it inflates again. I find this particularly weird, but completely believe it. I asked my mom about the missing time I had as a kid. It happened when I was 6. She remembers waking up and seeing me next to the side of her bed. She said I was talking and saying nobody listened to me. Then I got into bed and asked her to leave her lamp and TV on before I went to sleep. She said that soon after is when I started to have explicit nightmares about aliens and monsters, as I put it, kidnapping me through my bedroom window. And when I started getting really deep into TV shows about the paranormal, she doesn't remember the lights, but she also doesn't remember me opening her door and walking in. From then on, for a little while, I would wake up in the middle of the night and go to her bedroom to ask to sleep with her, because I was that scared. I haven't been able to sleep with the lights off since then. Again, I don't remember any of this. My mom also said that shortly before the incident of lost time, I started seeing a shadow figure in the house. I called him Stephen, and for some reason I was really adamant that it was spelled with a PH and not a V. My mom thought it was just an imaginary friend. Then she saw the shadow of a man standing over me while I was sleeping, who then disappeared into thin air when she turned the lights on. 6 years ago, my mom found out that there was a family in the neighborhood, before they moved in, whose sons were drafted for the Vietnam War. Only one came home, Stephen. In 1978, he took his own life on the same day that I would be born 20 years later. I don't know if the two things are related, but that was the timeline of events that my mom helped me piece together. It still doesn't explain what happened completely, but at least someone remembers something. My mom said that she'd try to see if she could remember more and tell me if she did. Ask Reddit. Attended a school back in 2013 to 14, and it was so haunted I still don't believe it. Me and many other students, but also some of the teachers working there, saw things go flying in the air, heard footsteps, were sometimes touched by something that we couldn't see, and had various new and expensive equipment. Myself, I had an iPhone 5, and a fully spec'd late 2012 iMac at that time, fail whenever the ghost, quote-unquote, entered the room. The various tech problems all disappeared as soon as I left the school and took my stuff back home with me, by the way. The iMac's still in use today by my uncle, and he experiences no issues with it to this date. So to my first serious experience at the school. One night I was alone with a girl at my student house. Everyone else was partying down at the school building, when suddenly we started hearing footsteps from the attic upstairs. It was a tiny room up there. There was only really enough space for storing some torn hiking equipment, like a few backpacks and such. After maybe half a minute or so, the footsteps started coming down the stairs from the attic. At this point, me and my best friend went dead silent, and we were both just staring towards the door that went to the attic. The footsteps came all the way down and went into the living room where we were sitting. At this point, the sound of the footsteps switched from sounding like someone walking around in big boots into what sounded more like somebody coming wet and barefoot out of the shower or a tub. When the sound got to the middle of the room, which was right in front of where me and this girl were sitting, it stopped. And for a few brief moments, there was nothing but dead silence. The girl and I just looked at each other for like 5 to 10 seconds before my eyes caught something going on behind the girl's back. We were sitting in a couch together, and behind her were these huge windows that went from the floor all the way up to the ceiling. They had some seriously huge blinds as well. And so I watched this pretty heavy lead thing that certain industrial blinds have be lifted all the way up from the floor to just above the middle of the window. There it kept floating in the air for about 5 seconds before it was punched into the window with such force that I'm sure the window would have broke if it hadn't been for those thick blinds protecting it. The girl didn't see this as it happened from behind her back, but you can be sure that she heard the noise. In fact, she got so scared that she literally jumped into my lap screaming. That's the moment when I stopped trying to give possible natural explanations to everything paranormal. Who have we seen? So there is this long-time abandoned house in a park near mine. It's already almost fully demolished. Only 3 walls remain, and the yard around. And me and some friends used to go there to explore, since it didn't belong to anyone. There was this particular time where me and my friend wanted to go there to see if it was good to shoot a short film. So we got up the hill and entered the yard. There was nobody, obviously, and that park is basically as abandoned as the house, and nobody goes there. Especially, after that fire that occurred that burnt everything, house included. Even though it's all rocks, so I don't really know how that could have burned. So as we entered the yard, we saw a large pile of rocks crumbled down inside the 3 walls. And my friend spotted an ancient sewing machine. It was like super heavy and rusty. It looked gold. For some reason, he wanted to bring it home, so I helped him take it. For all the time, though, I felt like a weird feeling all around, as if we were being watched. So as we took the sewing machine and turned around, I literally froze for a second. There was this lanky, pale woman standing in the middle of the yard. She appeared from nothing. We heard nothing, there was nothing, no one, and this woman pops up with her dog from air. She was really pale. I'd say her skin was completely white, and her dog was weird too. It was little, still no barking. It was like frozen, except it was trembling. So this woman said, "You're not supposed to be here." It seemed like a whisper, but it was much louder. It wasn't. So my friend was about to say something, but she said again, "This is private property." I swear I didn't see her blink once. She just was staring at us. So I said we were just looking around and we were going away. She stayed silent. So we just put away the sewing machine and got out of there. Before I opened the gate, she said, "Don't come back." Right after we got out, I peeked back in with my head and there was no one. So I got back in time, checked and heard no sound, saw no person. Like she vanished. Need help identifying what chased me. For some background, I, a 13-year-old female, have been able to see spirits my whole life. Unfortunately, this has drawn malicious entities to me and my family, and it's angered them whenever they haven't been able to fuck with me mentally because they know I can see them, which has caused me to be physically harmed by an entity in the past. But that's not what this post is about. Not only that, but my family lives in an area which used to be a World War II camp, where all the soldiers got killed in a blitz, and before that, it used to be an ancient burial site. So that does contribute to more than regular malicious activity. Tonight, around 11 p.m., I had a meltdown, and I ran out into the street incredibly angry and contemplating running into the road, but I heard something calling my name. It was a male voice, but it was very warped and obviously not human. I didn't turn around, and I ran, to which I heard whatever the being was chasing after me. When I eventually thought I'd lost the thing, I stopped for a couple of minutes to regain my breath. I started hearing what sounded like a cat meowing. However, there were no cats at all where I was. When I started to run again, I heard something chasing behind. When I stopped a third time to regain my breath, I was stupid enough to stop in a very shadowy area, and I heard what can only be described as the noise security cameras make when they turn, like a hissing directly behind me, very loudly. I ran again, and this time I saw what looked like a completely black hand moving across the road directly in front of me. I very luckily got back home safe, however. I have no clue what the thing was, and I'd like to know if anyone has any idea of what thing it could have been, as I'd like to know. From what I can tell, it was attracted to the fact that I was very strongly upset and angry. I have PDA autism, which causes my emotions to be much more intense than a non-autistic person's. It was able to mimic voices and sounds, and could detach parts of its body. Ask Reddit. Happened a few years ago when me and my buddies went into the woods around 9 p.m. To get to the woods, you have to cross an old road that leads to a waterworks factory. This road separates the housing estate in the woods. Well, we were crossing this road and decided to enter through a different place that we'd never been to before. And we were only halfway down the road when something whistled at us. You may be thinking, it's probably just your mates, or something like that. But this was different. We knew it was coming from the bushes almost instantly, and legged it back towards the houses. Naturally, my fight or flight impulses kicked in and I ran, but in the complete opposite direction to my buddies. They ran back the way that they came. For some stupid reason, I ran straight towards the place the whistle came from. Realized I was going the wrong way, screamed, saw a silhouette of a man in the bush, and nearly fell over trying to turn around. We all regrouped and made the ultimate collective decision to go back in. Nothing. No person, no second whistle, no speakers or anything. The silhouette I saw was gone. So we went into the trees, found an opening, like a little circle on the ground amongst the trees. We found a little teddy bear, as if it was deliberately placed and positioned where it was. Sitting on top of two twigs made to look like a cross, and 4 other sticks holding the bear in place. We took a picture, left, and never came back. I've since lost contact with my buddies, due to me starting college and them entering their final year of high school. But I tried going there through the day just last week. But all the paths have been blocked by fallen trees due to a recent red warning winds in the UK. Storm Arwen ruined a beautiful forest and buried a mystery that we never got to solve. Big hotel spook in England. Me and my boyfriend stayed at a pub hotel in the early summer back when we were long distance, and boyfriend was still living in a different region. He would regularly come up to see me, and we'd stay in different hotels in my area of England because I lived with my family. In this pub in the room we were staying in, we had been having a little bit of an argument. Before it could really escalate, I decided to go outside and sit in my car for 5 minutes. So I left the hotel and sat in my car, which was in the car park, a little after 9 p.m. When I returned to the room about 5 minutes later, my boyfriend told me that we were in trouble with the manager for being noisy. He told me that after he returned to the room, the manager had knocked on our room door and told him off for making a noise, saying that he had received 2 complaints about the noise that we had been making. Before we checked out the next morning, I was looking out of our room window and saw a young couple also leaving and wondered if it had been them who'd been annoying everybody and who had complained, perhaps. We went out for breakfast and things about the complaint didn't add up to me. For one, we weren't that loud and hadn't been arguing for even that long before I went out to my car. So how had 2 people managed to complain, and for that complaint to go straight to the manager, all in the space of 5 minutes that it took for me to walk to my car and back? I concluded to my boyfriend that the manager must have just heard us himself and made up that 2 different guests had complained. Fast forward to the afternoon of that day that we checked out, and we unexpectedly needed to book another night at this pub hotel due to the trains all being on strike, when boyfriend was due to travel back home. While I was at work, my boyfriend went back to the pub and checked us in for another night. He apologized for us being noisy the night before to the woman who was checking him in again. This woman said she hadn't known about us having made a noise. My boyfriend told her that the manager had knocked on her door last night and told him off. The woman member of the staff said that that was odd, because the only staff they have on at night was the chef and the young male bartender, and neither of them go upstairs, and that their manager was a woman with blonde hair, not a man. The female member of staff said that she doesn't know who this man was. None of the staff do, but that other guests have also told her the same, that a man had knocked on their door complaining about the noise, implying to be the manager. Well, the man my boyfriend had spoken to was in his 60s, with gelled back salt and pepper hair, and he was really freaking mean. My boyfriend recalled to me later that when he apologized, this man just glared at him and didn't make a move to leave, so my boyfriend just awkwardly shut the door on him. My boyfriend asked who else had stayed there, but was told that us and the other young couple I saw leaving were the only guests that previous night. This left us questioning who on earth the man who knocked on the door was pretending to be the manager. Who was that? So that night we were feeling quite creeped out. We were in a different room that was just opposite the one that we'd previously stayed in. Anyway, eventually we forgot about it and were having a bit of a laugh when a really hard knock on our room door rang out. My heart sank, and I was telling my boyfriend not to answer because it's the man again. He, of course, answered anyway. The door was about 2 to 3 feet from the bed that we were on. He opened the door, and there wasn't anybody there or in the corridor, which we were at the very end of. It was a long, straight, creaky corridor. Well, we were terrified by now. The next day, my boyfriend emailed the pub explaining the situation and saying that we were concerned that perhaps a weird stranger was knocking on doors in their hotel. We gave them the exact times of both incidents and asked them to check on their CCTV cameras, one of which was right next to both of the rooms that we'd stayed in. The manager replied to his email with this. It's a screenshot of the email my boyfriend received from the pub. But since I can't attach images, I have transcribed the email. It goes as follows. Dear Mr. So-and-so, following your recent complaint about another guest knocking at your door late at night, we reviewed our CCTV footage from 8/6/23 and 9/6/23. At the started times these incidents took place, stated times. On the 6th, at exactly 21:05 p.m., CCTV footage showed a man knocking and having a brief conversation with the guest in the room, after which the man turned, left, and walked down the corridor. However, he was not picked up on any CCTV footage leaving the premises or walking further down the corridor. Following this, we've gone over security points of the building and made sure all entrances are secured to prevent anything like this from happening again. On 09/06/23, however, we did not pick up anything unusual happening on our cameras at the stated time of the incident. We hope these incidents didn't affect your stay at such and such pub, and we apologize profusely for any stress this may have caused. Just know we have taken all measures to resolve this. Kind regards, manager such and such pub. This email to us made us feel validated that we didn't imagine our experiences, especially to have it confirmed by the manager herself via CCTV. We did ask to see the CCTV ourselves, but our further emails were ignored, unfortunately. This pub was taken over by a pub chain company, and they're very strict with their staff about being anti-ghost stories and only focusing on high-quality customer service, according to a former member of staff who I by chance managed to speak to. This member of staff told me some crazy things about the pub. My late dad visited me, I think. My dad died in 2014. Complications from pneumonia. While he wasn't a good dad, he did take me seriously whenever I said I didn't feel good. Well, I'm absolutely miserable right now with the cold. I've been taking cold meds, and last night I took the nighttime one, So this could be a dream. I often wake up whenever my bedroom door opens. It squeaks loudly, and I refuse to lubricate it. Anyways, I hear my door open, and I see a man come to my side. He feels my forehead and softly murmurs that I have a fever. With a little bit of a light, I can see my late dad. I watch him as he goes to the other side of my bed and starts removing things from it. He tells me that he's going to lay down next to me until I feel better. I just nod as I start to close my eyes sleepily. My older son opens my door, and just as he enters, my dad disappears, and I fully wake up for a minute. My door is still closed. My son isn't there, and my things on the other side of my bed isn't where I left them last night. There's a small space cleared out. I'm still having that drowsy feeling, still feeling miserable, but also confused. I felt my late dad's touch on my face. I heard his voice and I saw him. The thing is, I don't believe in ghosts. Demons, yes, but not ghosts. I don't think I was dreaming because it felt so real, but at the same time, I must have. This is the first time I've seen something like this. But shortly after he died, I kept having vivid dreams of him every night, which I absolutely hated. Insights on a past experience. Back in the summer of 2016, I was living with my best friend and his family, as my family moved down south and eventually to California. I live in Connecticut, so it was a bit of a hike. I got a job that was a few miles away and bought a bike to go to and from it. My best friend was also in the same boat, and for a bit, that was our mode of transportation. We ended up working at the same place as well, so payday was on the same day for both of us. Well, one Thursday night we got paid, and we were taking a ride over to the gas station a few miles away to go get cigarettes as everything nearby was closed. The roads were completely empty, no cars. It was about 1:30 to 2 a.m., give or take. There was a very dark section of the road coming up in about 1/8 of a mile or so, where there were no street lamps and no lights from houses. Looking ahead, I was confused as I caught a glimpse of what seemed to be a radiant, very bright white flourish across the street of the sidewalk, almost leaving streaks of white behind it as it moved. It was not luminescent, as it didn't light up the surrounding area to what I could see. It was dark. I should have been able to notice it had it lit up the area. I was very confused at this point because I know what a flashlight looks like. That certainly wasn't one of those. And there's no cars or bikes riding around with any headlights or lamps. We continue down the road, and one side of the street on the sidewalk, there's a very old couple, wearing light colors, walking with their arms interlocked. Neither of them acknowledged our presence. They were walking so slow but looked so content. On the other side, trailing them, was a man, ahead of where I saw the light. He was dressed in a pure white outfit with shoes to match. No hair, not even stubble or shadow anywhere, no eyebrows, no facial expression besides a seriousness I've never seen on anyone before. He was on the tall side, with an average build. As we approached, I could see him looking through my friend to me. He grilled me the entire time as we were going by, and he turned his head to keep his stare on me even as we rode by. We go just a little further, and I turned around to take another look, and there's nothing, all three gone. I asked my friend like 2 minutes later if he saw any of that, to which he has no idea what I'm talking about, apparently. We go a little further, and I ask him to stop for a second, and I explained everything that I just saw. He rode with his head up the entire time and didn't see anything, saw absolutely nothing. I know I didn't hallucinate, and I was completely sober. I've brought the story up to multiple people, and nobody can provide me with an answer as to what I witnessed. I still think about it regularly, but I have no insight whatsoever. Shower prank. I'm a strong believer that if you acknowledge something, it gets stronger. This happened to me months ago, and I just want to put it out into the world in hopes that it takes away the temptation to bring this up to my fiancé all the time. One evening after work, I went to take a shower. I will admit that I had not slept the night before, so I was incredibly tired. I had my music as loud as it would go on my phone so I could hear it over the rushing water. About midway through, my music volume lowered to silent. I turned around to open the curtain to find out why my fiancé pulled back the curtain a little bit, stuck his head in the shower, and grinned at me. I looked at him with confusion, and he popped his head back out before turning the light off and closing the bathroom door. To say I was furious was an understatement. I really don't like certain kinds of pranks. Call me lame if you want. And one involving wet and slippery darkness just hit me hard with how tired I was. I immediately stepped out of the shower, flipped the light switch back on. The switch is right between the shower and the door. There's only about a foot between the two as they share a wall. That was in parentheses. And stormed out of the bathroom without even getting a towel. I found my fiancé sitting in his computer with his headset on and absolutely laid into him. He had this confused and panicked expression as I asked why he would think that was funny, telling him to never do that again. He asked me to explain what he did wrong, which made me angrier. But when he said that he had been playing since before I even went in the shower, I actually believed him. To begin with, he hates pranks even more than I do. We've been together for 6 years, and he's never so much as jumped out from a corner to startle me. I've never seen him mess with anyone else either. He's not the type of person that would even think to do something like that. But I was so tired that none of that sank in before I lost it on him. Along with simply not being the type, the setup of the apartment would have made it impossible for him to get back to the office without me hearing him. Between the bathroom and the office, there's a noisy metal baby gate. The living room, then the kitchen, and another noisy metal baby gate in the office doorway. I would have also heard his footsteps on the wooden floors if he were moving as quickly as he would have had needed to. I've thought about it over and over and over. It's the creepiest thing that's ever happened to me, and I want to write it off as me being sleep deprived, but I had to turn my music back up. I had to flip the light switch back on. I had to open the bathroom door to get out. We leave it open when the shower's going because it's just the two of us, and the bathroom has poor ventilation for steam. I made him check the apartment for anyone else. Even though I know what he looks like and the face was him, I asked him to stay in the bathroom with me until I washed the conditioner out of my hair. I think about this every time that I shower now. We've had some random things happen before that. Stuff moving into places that we know we didn't put it. Sounds we could rationalize forever. The motion sensor triggering on the cameras over nothing. But nothing nowhere near that level before then. I don't know what I'm looking for here other than a moment to just wring out my brain. But if anyone has ever had any similar experiences, this misery would welcome some company. And we at Paranormal M welcome your stories. So that's the end of them for tonight, and as usual, catch you guys tomorrow. Sweet dreams. See ya.